Hey, what's good, everybody, and happy new year to you. I am coming at you with the most latest, the end of the year, in fact, statistics for the area of South Surrey and White Rock. And if you've been following the channel at all this year, you're going to know that there's lots to talk about in today's video because the numbers are pretty shocking. We're actually looking at year over year, comparing the entire year of 2025 to see where it started and where it actually ended up. So I think you're going to really enjoy this one. And I've got a little bit more of a detailed information that I think you're going to appreciate as well, especially kind of how different things were actually really impacted throughout the year as we went. So without ado, let's get into it right now. So as a reminder, if you're new here, we are using what's called the home price index, and we're going to be talking about benchmark prices when you hear me refer to prices in this video. So what is a benchmark price? Well, it's not the average. The average can actually be skewed. It's not the median. The median can actually be skewed. It's what we consider the typical home for whatever product type. And there's a very fancy formula put together for us by the good people at University of British Columbia. And this is done all over Canada now to get this number called the benchmark price. And it is what the news media quotes. It is what the government uses for all of their home related information. It is the absolute best source of what is actually happening with housing stock in terms of pricing. Is it going up and down? So I want you to think about it a little bit like inflation more than anything. It's tracking what the trends are more than anything. So that's what we're going to be using here. Now, to give you a little bit of a perspective of what was happening last year, this graph I always find really interesting. If you look at the very far right of this graph, you can see historically that since this graph has been taken, since 1990, it actually begins in, we had the most amount of listings on the market since 1990. That's what that big blue bar on the far right is actually showing us. And you can actually see the red bar right beside it. If you go way down, 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 sales were one of the lowest years since 1990 that we've actually seen as well. So that just shows you the chasm, the incredible gap between the amount of people that were actually trying to transact real estate and the amount of people that actually participated in buying that real estate, which is really interesting. So the most recent statistics package, just hot off the presses here, came up from the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board, and there was a few things I really wanted to highlight in here for you. Look at the heading. 2025 Fraser Valley housing market slowest in over 2 decades. Over 2 decades, despite falling prices and decade high inventory. So it was like, holy smokes, it was the slowest market. We had falling prices and the highest inventory. I've underlined a few things on here as well. Maybe I'll just read it to you. Decade high inventory and softer prices failed to spark buyer demand in the Fraser Valley in 2025. Despite favorable conditions and increased negotiating power, many buyers stayed on the sidelines, making it one of the slowest years for sales in decades. I'm going to go skip a little bit here. The other part that I've underlined on the supply side, buyers had more choice than they've had at any point in the past 4 decades. That's 40 years. There was more inventory for buyers to choose from than they've had in the last 40 years. Absolutely incredible. And obviously that's going to have an impact on what's going on with the market. So getting into some of the graphs and stuff that you guys like to tune into this for, what I'm showing you right here, just before we get into the different product types, is the blue bar up at the top there. That is just all the properties in the Greater Vancouver Real Estate Board. And that's like Whistler all the way down to Vancouver, Richmond, Burnaby, Tri-Cities. That's kind of what's included in that. It's all types of properties. That is just the price trend of what's happened since the beginning of 2024. And of course, the red bar is what's happened in the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board, which is my real estate board where I do the majority of my business. And you can see what's happened there as well. And that's North Delta all the way to Abbotsford and whatnot. So you can kind of see what's been happening. But now let's get into what's kind of happening with supply and demand and how that has been affecting prices over the last year or so. So condominiums in South Surrey and White Rock, they had a really good rebound for whatever reason in the month of December. You can see the sales to active ratio did bounce into that red line there, that red kind of part of the graph, which is the balanced market condition. And in fact, it's just shy of being in a seller's market condition, which is very interesting. So a lot of people chose to participate in buying condominiums in South Surrey and White Rock in the month of December. And the sales also, or pardon me, the listings also came down. So it kind of created this nice little opportunity for people that were looking to get into condos or looking to sell their condos during that month. So that is the type of market where we really think that there's not much of an advantage to either party, sort of thing. We would typically call that a balanced market, but based on where things are at, I'll actually get to that in a moment, I guess. But I'm going to skip these graphs for today. So this shows us what the price trends have been doing, but in fact, actually, the month of December is not actually showing on these for whatever reason, and I want to get this video out to you guys. So this is the actual numbers that we're seeing, just rather than seeing them physically on the graph. So month over month, condos were down $4,300 according to the home price index, and over the last year, they're down about $38,000. So for the year of 2025, they're down about $38,000 in total. Even though it is showing me for the month of December, anyways, it was in a balanced market condition. One month doesn't always tell us the whole story. You can see here that there was a few months that it popped into a balanced market, and there was many months that it was below previously. So, with that being said, condominiums, we are in a buyer's market. I would still assume so, unless it stays in that balanced condition. So, we definitely noticed more activity, as I saw, or as I said, and we've seen a lot of first-time buyers kind of be coming back to the market because prices are down. Actually, I think you'll find this really interesting. Maybe we'll talk about South Surrey as a whole here. When it came to price declines in 2025, detached homes, they were fairly average in terms of how they performed in terms of the rest of the Fraser Valley. So they were down roughly about 5.6% year over year. The average was maybe about 4, so they were a little bit higher than that. Townhomes were kind of in the midpoint of that as well, and condos were actually on the lower end. So South Surrey and White Rock didn't fare that bad. It was detached homes that kind of took the brunt of the punishment. But interestingly enough, talking about where the markets are and whatnot, prices for condominiums in South Surrey and White Rock are actually back to the same levels of affordability that they were in September of 2021. So we have seen a lot of the value that was gained during the COVID years where the market was just going crazy actually been given back, or it's come down since then. And you can really see that when you start looking at graphs like this to see what's happened with the benchmark price and whatnot. So I thought that was really, really quite interesting. In fact, I did save something on my screen here for you guys so you'd be able to see that. So this is apartments, and this is more reflective of what apartments have done. And you can see if I go back here to for condominiums was actually December of 2021 is when the price was actually lower than it is today. So I found that really quite interesting. Affordability is here. If you've been sitting on the sidelines waiting to buy something, how much longer is this going to happen? And it's easy to say that it's going to keep going, and it's easy to say it's not going to keep going. And we'll talk about that a little bit at the end of this video, and something to give you something to consider. But affordability is definitely here. We've seen a lot of that money given back that we saw with those big gains, as I mentioned. New construction, as I mentioned, is stalled, and just keep an eye on this market because this market is the domino that knocks down the other markets. Townhomes were at the top of the balanced market as well. So December fared fairly well for townhomes as well in terms of activity in the market. Again, this graph was not updated. It doesn't have, it wasn't available rather. The December numbers, so you're not actually seeing it on here, but townhomes actually increased last month in the area of South Surrey and White Rock. So you're up $9,200 month over month, and year over year, you're down $48,000. So big change for the year of 2025, but at least the month of December came back with a little bit more giving back to the market and giving sellers a little bit of that equity back that they've lost this year. This market really an advantage to nobody. So this is going to be the market to watch. I've been saying that again and again and again because it is that market that has the affordability and the space. Two working people, if they've got a decent down payment, can typically get into this type of market, and they need that if they're buying their first home, especially if they've got a young family. They need the space that can be offered in a townhome. It's got the yards, and typically they're in the areas that are quite walkable based on where they're built. So this is always going to be the market to watch. And if that condominium market starts selling and selling and selling like we saw in December, that's going to allow these people in the townhomes to go ahead and sell as well, because those are those move up options oftentimes for a lot of those people. So you're definitely going to want to keep an eye on some of these numbers. Prices have stopped descending. In fact, they have gone up, right? $9,200 month over month. So, is that a trend? It'll be interesting to see, but it was a good month for townhomes in the area, and they did quite well. So, on to detached homes to give you a little bit of an idea. And actually, before I jump into that, townhomes are back to the same prices. They are in and around where they were of October of 2021. So, I want to make sure I give you that. Detached homes, you can see how much they've struggled, how much they are in a buyer's market condition, how far away they are from a balanced market, and the market has not been very favorable to detached homes at all for the area of South Surrey, White Rock. In fact, it was one of the harder hit products, detached homes in South Surrey, White Rock, for all of the Fraser Valley. It was one of the higher kind of hit areas, generally speaking, that North Surrey. So what's happening with detached home prices? Well, month over month, they're down another almost $14,000, and year over year for the year of 2025, we're talking about $121,000 change in the benchmark price for what's going on in detached homes. Those prices are back to where they were as of September 2021. So if you're kind of following along at home, we had September 2021 for detached, October was for townhomes, and December was for condos. So we're really back to 2021 prices towards the later half of the year there. This market is clearly an advantage to the buyers. There's still a ton of inventory to choose from. And even though a lot of inventory may have been removed from the market for the month of December, that's pretty typical, as you'd imagine, and it's not just specific to detached homes. That's condominiums, townhomes, all that sort of stuff. You will see a lot of that stuff coming back to the market. It will be old inventory that is being relisted. It'll be new people that are either putting it on for the beginning of the year, or you're going to see lots of people putting their properties on for the spring market. I'll touch on that maybe at the end of the video. If you are looking at selling your detached home, you still need to be priced properly. You need to be ahead of all your neighbors, because if you're not, you're going to be sitting on the market. And should it continue to trend that way, the way that we just said, month over month, down $13,000 to $14,000, you might find yourself in an even worse position next month. So definitely pay attention to that. Prices are going to remain challenged for now in this market. So if you're a buyer, go ahead and put your offers out there. Now, I want to leave you with a couple interesting things with market drivers to talk about. So, I'm trying to get this video out to you as early in January as possible when the stats come out. And there's a couple interesting things that I think you're going to want to know. So, one of them is mortgage rates. If you've been sitting on the fence thinking about what's going to happen with mortgage rates and thinking that they're, likely going to go down for the year of 2026, nobody knows, right? Nobody knows, but there is a lot of speak out there, and I just kind of pasted something in here about from the CIBC economics department that they predict that the policy rate will remain at 2.25% until the end of 2026 from the Bank of Canada. So they don't predict a lot of movement, if any, from that area. Now, variable rate and what the Bank of Canada does is a little bit different than fixed rate. If you're unfamiliar with how that works, we just did a video on the YouTube channel about fixed rate versus variable rate. So check that out. You'll really enjoy it. One of the other drivers is economic shifts. And we've had, getting a trade deal signed with the US on here for forever. And it's just something I feel like we should stop talking about. But one of the things I do want you to pay attention to is what the Supreme Court ruling coming out of the United States is related to the tariffs that the government down there has put on other countries importing goods into the United States. That is a really big deal. And it will be interesting to see what happens, because there could be a variety of outcomes, but if the moral of the story is the tariffs are stopped because the Supreme Court deems them to be, I don't know what the word would be, I'm not a legal expert, but illegal, they can't do them, whatever that might be, that's going to be a big change. That's going to take a lot of power away from that government, or feels like it takes a lot of power. It's going to look like a big blow, but that's a big win for any countries that want to import goods in the United States. And there could even be talks about getting refunds back for any of that tariff money. So it might be a very interesting story, and it could have been released as early as last Friday. So we're just kind of waiting to see when that might come out. So I definitely think you should be following that. Demand, we're getting into the busy season. I talked a little bit about spring and what happens. If you're a home buyer that is maybe sitting on the fence thinking spring is a better time to buy, or if you're a home seller thinking spring is a better time to sell, we have a video that we did on the YouTube channel about the pros and cons of waiting to spring, and more specifically, what happens to the numbers, the price of homes when you wait to the spring. I'm not going to give it away, but you want to check that out, because I got some graphs and some real data in there that I think you're going to find very, very interesting. Demand and seasonal trends, that's kind of the same thing. We know there's lots of demand out there, and we're getting into the busier spring market coming up pretty quick. And local policy changes, nothing to report as of now, but hey, it's the BC government. They're always doing wild stuff, and we'll see what is on the books for 2026. Anyways, guys, wishing you a prosperous year. If you need any help with your real estate endeavors, you can connect with me in the description below this video. And don't forget to subscribe because you're going to get all of the great content like the stuff I mentioned in today's video, as well as these monthly updates. And other than that, I want to make sure you're following us on our Instagram channel as well, because we're doing a lot of short form content that we are not posting on this YouTube channel. So if you're really into knowing everything there is to know about what's going on in South Surrey and White Rock, everything from development, real estate information, just news around town, new restaurants, could be anything like that. We're posting that all there. So that'll be down below in the description of this video as well. All right. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.